Hey guys, C2 here with a game analysis for you today. First game analysis I've done in a long time actually. It's going to be the final game of the Curse Trials Grand Final between Savjz and Thijs. It's been a while since this game was played, and there's been a lot of Hearthstone in between as well. The Americas Championships, the Southeast Asia Championships, the Clash Challenge I believe what it was called, and another tournament. There's been a ton of Hearthstone, but a lot of people can agree that this game was really good, one of the best games in Hearthstone history basically. And yeah, it was game 5 in the finals between these two players. And the winner, I forgot how much money the winner got, but I'm sure these two players are just as interested in the prestige as the money since they've made a ton of money throughout their career. If you want to check out the original video, it's pretty obvious. It's right there on the screen on Amaz's channel. So if you want to check out the original or you don't want to get spoiled before you watch this analysis video, then go ahead and check that out. Now, let's just get started with the games here, or talking about the games, I should say. And basically, this was... Okay, let's just talk about the tournament format first, right? So the Curse Trials was standard format, quote-unquote. So you're not allowed to use any Naxxramas cards, not allowed to use any GVG cards. The only time you're ever allowed to use those cards is if it comes off a random effect, like for say for instance, you discover something from Naxxramas or GVG, you're allowed to select and then play those cards. Other than that, though, you're not allowed to put them in your deck. So things like Sludge Belcher and Pile the Dreader and Dr. Boom are not allowed. So this kind of made the deck a lot different. And what these players have gone with, at least for these two decks, are Thijs has gone with a Dragon Warrior and Savjz has gone with a Dragon Priest, which is kind of more control oriented. Obviously, you can see in the hand there has the Flash Heals, which obviously pair with Akanai and the Entomb. So Savjz put basically the Akanai Circle and Akanai Flash Shield combos to make up for the fact that he doesn't have things like Light Bomb, which is not allowed. And Thijs, he went for a bit of a different strategy along with his G2 teammates. He went for basically a board control deck, but he's controlling the board. It's kind of like a control warrior, but you're controlling it via your minions. The only removal options are his weapons, Bash and Shield Slam, and that's it. So basically you're kind of zooming the board and trying to keep control that way. There's some late game options like Varian and what was the other one? It was Onyxia, right? So there were some other, dragon options in his G2 teammates list, like Nefarian, for instance. But yeah, overall, the strategy for Thijs here was to go for board control, which means that he's basically unfavored in this matchup, right? So Thijs' strategy here, as you'll see in a second, is to kind of get rolling and get on the board and pressure his opponent and hope Savjz doesn't have the answers. Because basically, Savjz wins in the long term, because of all the control options he has and all the answers he has. Like I mentioned, Thijs has less answers. And he also, speaking of Savjz also wins in the fatigue game most of the time, which is ironic considering how this game played out. But yeah, the reason why he wins in the fatigue game is because they have similar card draw options. They both have Azure Drakes. Thijs has Slam and Shield Block, whereas Savjz has Power Word Shield and Northshire Clerics. But Thijs has things like Varian Rin, which draw a lot of cards from the deck. And even though it can be a 2 or 3 for 1, there are only 2 or 3 for 1 in that current board state. And as long as Savjz can deal with it, then in the long scheme of things, i.e. fatigue, then it's not really 2 or 3 for 1 because Savjz has dealt with each card that's been pulled from the deck, right? Whereas Savjz, on the other hand, Entomb is a 2 or 3 for 1, depending on what you entomb. Sylvanas is usually a 2 for 1. So things typically work out better for a priest in the long run as far as fatigue is concerned. Obviously, things like tank up can make a big difference. But yeah, so overall, Thijs is the underdog, and he knows that, and it kind of shows in his play. By the way, I'm going to be coughing a little bit, but I wanted to get this out quickly before this game kind of left people's consciousness, right? All right, so let's go. The game is on 2x speed, and the reason for that is because I'm going to be pausing a lot, talking about plays, but on the other hand, there's a lot of straightforward decisions that don't need to be explained at all, and I don't want to be sitting there waiting for the players to be making their plays. So if you can talk about the mulligan first, what happens here is Savjz keeps the Shadow Word Pain, whereas only, which is nice, because what he wants to do, Savjz, he wants to basically kill the Twilight Guardian, right? And really nothing else, because he knows that Twilight Guardian is definitely an option. That's one of the easiest ways to deal with Twilight Guardian. Otherwise, it's really difficult to deal with this card if he doesn't have the Shadow Word Paint. So he's keeping it specifically for that, and he's tossing everything else. You don't want to keep Power Word Shield. It's kind of, you know, Priest 101. You need a minion to put it on, and he doesn't have the Northshire Cleric in hand anyway. It could be a complete dead card. Entomb obviously is too expensive to keep, and Flash Shield is a combo card. You don't really want it until turn 5 anyway. And Thijs makes a nice keep, which I really agree with. He throws away the Slam, which you don't really need, obviously. And then he keeps the Twilight Guardian and the Azure Drake, because he knows he's playing against a Priest, and he wants the Twilight Guardian there for a turn 4 play. And he also needs the Dragon with it. So if he tosses the Azure Drake, it's actually less likely that he gets a Dragon on time, and then he might not have the turn 4 Twilight Guardian play anyway. So I like keeping both of these, and even though he doesn't have a 2-drop, he has 5 draws for a 2-drop if you think about it, because he gets the Slam card, he gets the extra card afterward, or I guess 3, sorry. He has three draws for that. 3 draws. So he gets rid of the Slam, gets rid of the and then he gets the other card, and then he gets a card after that by the time turn 2 runs around. I guess I was thinking of 5 because that's how many cards would be in his hand. But yeah, so he has a lot of time for a 2-drop, which he doesn't really need, and he has a lot of time for his 3-drop, which would be the Fierce Monkey. So let's get into this. And so that's the reason why they go with their particular mulligans, and it definitely makes sense. I guess I paused it too long. Okay, here we go. All right. So like I said, and Thijs gets his Alex Trials as champion to be able to play out. And like I said, Thijs realizes that he needs to be as aggressive as possible, right? Because he's not going to win in the long term, and he wants to basically just flood the board. He's going to play around the options that Savjz has as much as he can, but at the same time, he just wants to be... He wants to make Savjz have the answer, essentially. Alright, sorry about that Skype sound. But, yeah, and here Savjz, excuse me, realizes that he can't really use Shadow Word Pain on the Alex Trials as champion because he wants to use the Twilight Guardian, and he has a ton of time. And if his opponent overcommits to the board, then he can just go ahead and Arcanine Circle. So he's not too worried about his opponent overcommitting to the board. He knows that the Dragon Warrior has really no burst at all. There's no Grom or anything like that, so he can take his time. So this is really heads-up play by Savjz, not panicking basically from the board and taking things slow. And Thijs realizes that kind of, and he's like, okay, well, at least this won't die to Arcanine Circle plus Ping because my opponent's not on 6 mana yet. And yeah, so you see Thijs kind of like frustrated by that, right? He realizes that Savjz is playing super slow and he's taking his time, and the fact that he waited so long in that Shadow Word Pain means, so what do I do here? So this is kind of an interesting time, right? This is a little bit of a turning point, a tiny turning point, I should say. So Thijs basically, he kind of suspects that there's an Arcanine Circle in Savjz's hand, but he's starting to realize that Savjz is not going to use Arcanine Circle with just this board. And the other thing that kind of concerns Thijs right now is that his opponent could just play Blackwing Corruptor, and if his opponent plays Blackwing Corruptor, then Blackwing Corruptor takes out one of these guys. And this was mentioned in the cast a lot by both Frodan and Crip, which is that, or it happened a lot in the tournament, which is why they mentioned it, is that there's so many 3-attack things in the Dragon Warrior, but everything has 4 health a lot of the time on the opponent's side, so it's really annoying to deal with these guys. You're basically overkilling the entire time. So if you look at it from Thijs' point of view, if he sits here and plays patient and does armor passes, then, you know, his opponent just gets to hit the face, or sorry, my bad. If Thijs just armor and attacks and then passes, then Savjz can go ahead and play the Blackwing Corruptor and kill one of these guys. And now Savjz is basically 2.5 for 1-ing Thijs anyway. So putting another guy on the board is actually forcing the Arcanine Circle and preventing Thijs from getting 3 for 1 in that instance anyway. So I do like the play from Thijs for playing this Azure Drake. At first it seems like an overcommitment, but he needs to force out the Arcanine Circle at some point, and it's going to get a lot of value later anyway. And another thing to keep in mind as far as the Dragon is concerned, so he plays a Drake this turn, which means he draws a card this turn. He also draws a card for next turn, and then he probably plays something else after that, because if his opponent goes Arcanine Circle, he's going to go Wrathy Weaponsmith. So basically Thijs has 3 separate draws in order to draw into another Dragon. So that's a risk that he took, and that's basically all that was going into Thijs' head right here. So we do see Savjz go with the Arcanine Circle. It's pretty obvious. I mean, right now it's a 3 for 1. Or 3 for 2, I suppose, because the weapon gets to kill this off. But that was such a huge board that you really can't pass up that opportunity, and it was stacking up to be a lot of damage. And then Savjz also goes for, this is pretty obvious, right? So Thijs just kills it with the Arathi Weaponsmith, and Savjz goes for the kill with the Blackened Corruptor. And now Savjz is considering whether or not he wants to play this. He realizes that it could go to Fatigue, and also that Thijs might consider this a threat, so he might go out of his way to kill this. And Thijs indeed does go for the Bash, Shield, Slam plus Earthring Force here. And I kind of do agree with this from Thijs, because he needs to get a board presence, and if he wastes time re-equipping the Fire War Axe, he can't actually kill everything on the board. And the thing about this matchup, which makes it so hard, obviously Thijs has to be the aggressor first off, but on top of that, he needs to actually have board presence first before his opponent. Because the scary thing about playing Priest is that if they have board presence first, and this is kind of what, you know, the problem is when Priest plays Druid as well, as from the Druid point of view. When the Priest plays Druid, I'm just going to stop here so I can make my point. When Priest plays Druid, if the Priest has the board already and Druid just puts stuff on the table, then Priest can just kill it and heal. And they can use things like Circle Hailing or Flash Heal to make sure that things are out of the way. And since Thijs doesn't have any executes, he only has Shield Slams, it makes it really difficult. So he actually needs stuff on the board to be able to basically have charge, you know, or not obviously not actual charge, but to be on the board to be able to attack the next turn so that Savjz can't hit and heal and get it out of weapon range, which is really important. Because then Thijs is stuck and he has no way to deal with his opponent's board. So even though this seems weird, and he's obviously, you know, disappointed that it got killed by the second Blackwing Corruptor, he needs to have stuff on the board initially before his opponent has any things on the board. So that's basically the tempo play that Thijs made last turn. So it seems weird that he's overreacting, quote unquote, to the board from Savjz, and maybe he could have played it slower, but in reality he couldn't really play it slow. Thijs picks up the Dragon finally, is able to play his Blackened Corruptor. This is pretty straightforward here. And Savjz goes for what I consider to be the best play as well. He goes for the Drake into the Guardian and puts up as big as board as possible. Now he's finally getting onto the board. And this is all straightforward stuff. And this is a play, I mean, this is not too difficult to explain, but Thijs here goes for the shield block first. Some people like to attack first and then shield block second. Because you obviously want to have, I mean, you want to armor up after you attack, right? But in this case, he really needed to know what card he got first. So in this case, going for the shield block first, it really wasn't an issue. On top of that, if he picks up Shield Slam right now, he's already used his other Shield Slam, so the armor second is not going to make any difference from here on out. And he goes for pretty standard play again. Thijs needs to be in control of the board in order to have any chance this game, so it definitely makes sense, the play he went for. And Savjz, he goes for the Drake. There's no, I'm sorry about that. So Savjz goes for the Drake. No other real play for him to make. Actually, I'm actually going to pause this and turn and put my Do Not Disturb on Skype for 1 second, so this isn't as annoying. Anyway, so pretty obvious since he doesn't have any dragons in hand anyway, or things with dragon synergy, gets the Pyromancer, which is nice for him, and puts the Powered Shield on the Drake, so it doesn't die to the Fire War Axe. The Pyromancer dies anyway. Thijs goes the Varian, which is a pretty obvious decision, gets the Ysera, and gets the Slam and the Cruel Taskmaster as well. Kills off the Pyromancer. Everything's pretty straightforward. Obviously, these are big events during the game, but they're not really big decisions for either of these players. And Savjz goes for the only play which he can, which is to kill off the Cruel Taskmaster and go for the 50-50 Sylvanas plus the Death. And he misses, unfortunately, and he also goes for the Flash Heal, I believe. Yeah, so it doesn't get, there's not a good, nice kill on the Ysera. And this is where Thijs kind of blunders a bit. Thijs goes for the Dream on the Varian after slamming the Drake. He wanted to get some sort of answer for this Varian, which, now that I think about it, I'm not really sure. I guess he was looking for the Bash. I think the Bash was the only thing really that killed this. So that's what he's looking for. Didn't get it. And Thijs makes a bit of a mistake here, right? He says that, okay, I can't actually kill this Varian. And it seemed like a reasonable decision at the time. But since he couldn't really kill the Varian, then the Varian could very well kill his Ysera, and Thijs kind of felt like his Ysera was the only thing keeping him in the game. And if the Ysera goes uncontested, then he can maybe win the game. The other thing that maybe went through Thijs' mind, which I'm not sure if it did or didn't, but if he dreams the Variant, then maybe Thijs draws enough cards that, or excuse me, Savjz draws enough cards that basically Thijs can eventually win the fatigue game, which is something maybe that went through Thijs' mind. But in any case, does kill the Drake, does dream the Varian, and then goes for the Justicar. And Savjz can't believe it because he basically, this was the only, in Savjz's mind, this is the only way back in the game because his hand was pretty poor. I think if Thijs saw his hand, he wouldn't have gone for that. But in any case, Savjz goes for the same play and picks up a Ysera, which is pretty awesome for him, obviously. Gets a Nightmare of his own. And I'm actually forgetting what happened this turn. But, yeah, this is actually basically... There's a lot of decisions to be made here for Thijs. There's like so many things he can possibly do here. Obviously, I think he goes for the Brand plus the Twilight Guardian. But the biggest point here is he can't actually kill the Ysera, so... Oh yeah, I remember this. Okay, now I remember. So basically, Thijs made the decision, and I kind of agree with this. If his opponent doesn't have Ysera's Awakens, and this is really awesome for him, he basically just goes aggressive, right? Because he can't... It takes too much effort to kill the Varian, it takes too much effort to kill the Ysera, so you might as well put enough blockers up to keep his own Ysera alive, and then go face. So, yeah, sorry I forgot what happened that turn, but this is actually very good from Thijs. And he puts a lot of pressure on Savjz. And here Savjz has basically the play of the game. It's a really awesome play. So what he does here is he does a double trade, and then he Northshire Cleric circles. This does get him closer to fatigue, but I mean he wants as many options as possible, and he really doesn't have enough minions on the board, and he wants as many minions as possible. So he goes for the circle play to get as many options again as possible. Goes for the Entomb as well, and then he goes for the Wormer's Agent into... Oh, he flash heals himself too because he's afraid of dying. And goes for the Wormer's Agent into Nightmare, which is a really good play and something a lot of people might have missed because they're not completely familiar with Nightmare, which doesn't go off until the start of your turn. And here Thijs is in a really big bind. He has nothing really to do. The Ysera's Awakened just kills his own board. It kills as much stuff on his board as his opponent's board because this Wormer's Agent's going to die anyway. And you see Thijs actually start, targeting for a second. He's like, wait, and then he realizes his mistake, like, wait a second, this is going to die anyway. There's no point for me to attack this. And so he just kind of puts stuff on the board and passes, which is all he can really do. Unfortunately, he puts the Armorsmith on the board, which really helps out Savjz here. I think from Thijs' point of view, he thought that maybe Savjz would have taken the Brand, so he's fine, basically putting two Cabal targets on the board at the same time. And Savjz again goes for a pretty good play here. He does use the Power Word Chill, which puts him closer to fatigue, but at the same time he gets massive board control. And even if his opponent has Ysera's Awakens, he's able to take control of the board the next game, and his Ysera doesn't die either. So he goes for the steal on the Armorsmith to get as much armor as possible, kills everything else off. He kills all the big guys off. There's no fear from Brand this turn because, I mean, very unlikely that Thijs picks up a Battle Cry, and even if he does, it doesn't really matter too much. I suppose, well, he knows that it's a Ysera card, so I guess if it was a Dragon, and then he picked up the Dragon Corruptor. If it was exactly Emerald Drake, and then Thijs picked up a Blackwing Corruptor, and then killed the Ysera, that might be one thing, but then basically Savjz still has the board there, so it definitely makes sense. And Thijs obviously clears the board there, makes a lot of sense, and he's going to put the Blackwing Corruptor on the field after some deliberation. I think this is the right play too. He needs to have something on the board to contest his Ysera. And then Savjz on the back end, he does the exact same. He tries to save his Ysera as much as possible, so he uses both Holy Nova and Heal here to keep it alive, which definitely makes sense as well. Everything's fine and good here. Everything's somewhat straightforward. I mean, it's not that straightforward, but I definitely agree with all these plays made here. And then Thijs gets a really big pickup of the Onyxia, and this is where the fun starts, right? Savjz can kill this, but I do like his play initially of just dreaming it. It makes more sense for him to get stuff on the board that can deal with it, like the Laughing Sisters in hand, and also picking the Twilight Drake is pretty huge as well to put a blocker up in front of Ysera. So I do like his play here of using Dream and the Twilight Guardian plus the Laughing Sisters to just get a bigger board. And Savjz knows there's no brawl, so it definitely makes sense for him to go for this. And it also obviously costs Thijs 9 mana to go for the Onyxia once again, so he can't really play whatever he top decks. And this is all perfectly fine by Savjz. And yeah, he just goes face anyway because those whelps have to trade in, and there's no real good trade for Thijs, so he might as well go face. And then Thijs makes the rational play as well, which, I mean, he could have gone for the Drake, but going for the Onyxia is just so much more safe, essentially. Because you're getting a huge board. And then here Thijs decides whether he wants to attack or not, and decides to save his axe for a more pressing time, which definitely makes sense. And once Thijs ends this turn, this is where Savjz had probably the play of the game that other turn, but this is the anti-play of the game. So what Savjz ends up going for in the end here, he runs out of time, so he isn't able to play all of his cards. But he goes for a kill on the Onyxia using his Akanai, and then he dreams back his own Ysera, which doesn't make any sense. As you could see, he has one card left, so he knows this card is Ysera, and he's also running out of. He's literally running out of time, right? He doesn't have many cards left. He only has that one card left, and he doesn't have that much health. So he's not going to have time to play 2 Yseras. And it kind of makes sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Savjz's play doesn't make sense, but it makes sense why he was flustered, because there's so many things to think about this turn. One thing to consider, if you go face, maybe Thijs can, race him faster, especially with the Onyxia on board. Do you dream the Onyxia? Do you dream the Ysera? If you don't dream the Onyxia, how do you kill it? Because you kind of need to kill it, otherwise you just die. Do you play the Akanai? Because if you play the Akanai, you can't really heal yourself from that point on. If you play the Akanai, do you heal yourself first and get worse trade just so you can get the heal in? So there's a lot of things going on here from Savjz's point of view. And on top of that, if you start calculating lethal, like I think Savjz started calculating 2-turn lethal, but then he just kind of guesstimated it. And then and there's so many things going on that he probably stopped mid-calculation to think about what else he could possibly do. So there's a lot of stuff going on. But there's 2 things Savjz could have done here that would have won him the game. And by the way, Thijs has about like 5 cards left in hand, if I remember correctly. Or left in his deck. So one play that Savjz could have made here is to go all face, dream, play the Akanai, heal face, and then play the Blade Master and the Whelped, right? And what that does is, obviously there's 14 damage on board, plus the 2 would be 16 damage, so he gets this one to 13. And Thijs on the backswing, he can't really play another Onyxia because he's being pressured a lot, so he needs to have a tank up. So he tanks up, plays the Azurgic, plays whatever else he got on the following turn. I believe it was Monkey. But Savjz, I mean, he knows there's a Monkey in there, but it'd be pretty fortunate to get the Monkey exactly on the following turn. So Savjz, what he could have done is gone all phase, and then if Thijs tries to race him, then Savjz has easy lethal next turn, right? So Thijs has to start trading, and there's only so much he can really kill. Like, he can kill the Ysera, and he can kill the injured Blade Master, and say he picks up like a bash, he can maybe kill something else. But if he doesn't pick up the bash, then, or even if he does pick up the bash, I think I did the calculations earlier. So he would go from 13 to 20, but he wouldn't be able to. He'd only be able to kill this, and he'd kill this with his face. So there would still be 10, and then this would be 16 on the board. So Savjz, he would be almost dead, and then Thijs would have to trade his entire board anyway. And if he didn't trade, then he'd be dead. So that would be a one way to win for Savjz. And even if there was a Fierce Monkey pull, then there wouldn't be the bash. You can't have the bash and the Fierce Monkey at the same time, unless you had card draw, and the Azure Drake is too expensive to do all that stuff anyway. So yeah, basically if he had gone all face, then that would have been a win. And the other thing he could have done is the one thing is he didn't. If he did the play where he didn't dream the Onyxia and killed it, which is what he did, he didn't need the biggest mistake he made was dreaming his own Ysera, because there's no time to play 2 Yseras in back-to-back turns while you're both trying to deal with the board and while you're fatiguing. But let's just roll it here. So Savjz kind of agonized over this play, obviously, and the timer is like surprisingly short, right? It doesn't seem like it's too short until you get to a turn like this, and it's like really annoying to figure everything out. So eventually he just goes for a kill on the Onyxia, and he unfortunately runs out of time and is unable to play his injured Blade Master, as you'll see right now. So he takes basically everything in, and I guess he wanted to get the value on the Ysera after killing one of the whelps, but it didn't really. I mean, it's not that much value, right? because you lose so much tempo in the long run. And he could have just gone face like he did the prior turn anyway, and that would have been a lot more value in my opinion, getting the 4 damage to the face, because he needs to kill his opponent as fast as possible. So Thijs picks up he plays the Drake, plays the Monkey, and decides to tank up here, but unfortunately he runs out of time because he's deciding what he wants to kill. Realizes that he can just throw all 5 whelps into the injured Blade Master at the last moment. He doesn't have to take 2 extra damage. Unfortunately, as you can see, he misses it, and this is really painful for Thijs. And Savjz goes for the obvious play, which is just go for a Twilight Whelp and the Ysera and start killing out some stuff. And this is kind of bad from Savjz's point of view, because he realizes he needs to kill his opponent, but he plays, if he's intending on ever playing the Ysera again, I mean, Thijs can easily just race him, even though he has less stuff on the board, because of the fact that he has Tank Up, right? And also Savjz has an Akana in the field, and this really isn't that much damage on the field, especially in the face of Tank Up. So this attack is actually kind of unnecessary in my opinion by Savjz, or not unnecessary, but is kind of inconsistent, because later he has to control the board and he spends an attack on this whelp. So I think he should have actually killed the whelp here instead, even though it gives a kill on the Drake, because damage to the face is almost the same as healing himself in the future. So even if the Akane gets killed off, it doesn't really matter. And Thijs doesn't take the kill here, he goes for the face. So now Savjz realizes that he's not going to win the race, and he has to spend yet another turn developing stuff that's not Ysera. And also clearing his opponent's board. He also decides to kill off his own Akane because he realizes that he needs to start healing himself. And it's also basically the cleanest trait he has on the board, which is heal and hit. Yeah, so he starts thinking about the Ysera, but he realizes he needs the damage, so he goes for the Drake and the Blade Master and kills this, and then kills everything else off except for the Alexstrasza's champion, if I remember correctly. And this is, at this point, this is the correct move, right? You're going to die if you don't start trading off. And from here, Thijs has actually just won the game, because there's literally nothing that Savjz can do. He can't race, because he just dies. He needs to trade here. And Savjz doesn't realize, obviously, that the last card is Bash. But even if he knew the last card was Bash, and he healed himself instead of playing the Ysera, then he wouldn't be able to kill his opponent in time. He would be at 2 after Thijs bashed his face, which Thijs definitely would have done. He would have bashed Savjz in the face. So instead of dying, Savjz would have been at 2. He wouldn't have a lethal the next turn, no matter what Ysera's cards he got, because he would only get 1. Even if he had Nightmare, he wouldn't be able to tie either, because you can't. If Ysera's awakens, then he kills himself, and he doesn't get to tie, or he doesn't get like to kill his opponent at the same time, because the fatigue doesn't come first, obviously. So at this point, Savjz he can't do anything. He decides to play the Ysera, which is probably the right play. I think he thinks that Thijs has Nefaria in last, which is what was in Life Coach's deck, I believe. But it ends up being the Bash, and Thijs ends up winning the game. So once Savjz made the play of dreaming back his own Ysera, there was nothing really he could have done to win the game. And it was really well played by Thijs, obviously. I mean, there's obviously that one part where he wasn't able to make that last attack. But Thijs, knowing that it was an unfavored matchup, he really went for the line of play that would win him the game and trying to be as aggressive as possible. And it's also really good memory by him. He knew that the last card was Bash, which is crazy to think about, because I don't think we saw him taking notes during the game. So really, well tracked by Thijs, I should say. But yeah, it was a really cool game, and it went back and forth. And obviously, with the benefit of hindsight, it's easy to know what Savjz and Thijs could have done in all those situations. But it was just really cool overall. And I hope you enjoyed my analysis of the game. Obviously, it's cool to look back on some of the decisions, especially in a game like this where Variant isn't the card that's typically played. And I hope I allowed you guys to make sense of that game, even though it was pretty crazy overall. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe and all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys next time.